My name is Sean Eberhard with GoingLowBook.com. I just published my book, Going Low, in December of 2019. Sorry you can't see my face too good. I'm here at Shadow Moss Plantation Golf Club in Charleston, South Carolina. Today is July 23rd, 2020. The reason you can't see my face is because it's so sunny and so hot that it just ain't working out with my phone. So I apologize about that, but you can see what I look like on my website. Anyway, in this video, I'm here to demonstrate how to hit an effective bunker shot. One of the things you'll notice about this bunker is that it has rained recently, so when you take a practice swing, you can hear that mud. That's a mud sound up here by the lip. If I take a practice swing up here, see, that's a softer sound. So one of the things to analyze, which I'm going to cut in and out and show you the differences between wet, hard, firm, soft dune sand. The most important thing when you're in a bunker is to really assess the type of sand you're hitting out of, because that will determine how open or square the club face will be, what club you take, how big of a swing you hit. The one thing I really want to emphasize right now, if you watch my very first video that I posted, it's kind of a disaster because it was my first one ever, and the tripod fell over, and I've gotten a little better at video editing. But the one thing you will notice between my bunker technique is very similar to my flop shot technique. So what you want to do in a bunker is first, like I said, assess the sand. So I'm in some wet sand, which means I'm going to want to have a more open club face, and I'm also going to want to take a more aggressive swing and take less sand than I would as if I were in a dune type sand shot. Your stance is going to be wide. I'm going to take another side angle video view so you can see my stance. But if you look at it, your stance should be about a little outside of shoulder width, about driver width, if not even a little bit more than driver width. And you want your left toe in the open position. I have a 60-degree wedge here that has 6 degrees of bounce. And what I'm going to do with this shot is lay the club flat open. I'm going to take a picture of that, but the club is wide open. I'm almost turning it into like a 68-degree wedge. So the setup's very similar to the flop shot in terms of width of the stance, open stance, and how open the club face is. What's also very similar with the flop shot is I like to think of early wrist hinge almost to start it and really taking it up and out, chopping across the ball. Now, the one thing I talk about in one of my tips of the week is you never want to feel like you're blasting out of the sand. You don't want to feel like you're really swinging as hard as you can and blasting. You want to be very rhythmic and smooth. You want to take a full back swing. You want to make sure that you hit it crisply, but you see the difference between that and there? That's all just control right there by being more smoothly. So I'm going to hit this shot with this pin. You might be able to see it now. The sun's set down a little bit. So you set up, take your line. You want to twist your feet into the ground. I can tell this is kind of muddy right here. Aim left, club face open. With this type of sand right here, I'm going to try and take about 1 inch behind it and just notice that early wrist hinge up and out and how I take it all the way back and then I follow through with it, okay? So here we go. So you see that was very smooth. That was a great shot. I was just expecting a little bit more rollout on the green. Ball ended up being about 10 feet, but I thought the green was going to be a little firmer. I think they might have just punched or overseeded the greens out here. So I'm going to show you the side view now of the stance and what I'm kind of talking about with that early wrist hinge. And I'm also going to take some pictures of some soft dune sand and this wet sand, and opposed to what you want to take in terms of how much sand based off the consistency of it, if it's firm or soft. So here we got the same shot to that pin, same sand, that muddy sand right there. And I just want to show you ball position, width of the stance, kind of at a side angle, and also that same wrist hinging action. Okay, so if you can see here, the width of my stance, as I was showing you earlier, is probably a little bit wider than even a driver's swing. And that left toe is kind of pointed out. Actually, I'm not aiming right. That left toe is kind of pointing out in that open position. Now the club, again, dead flat open. And what I really want you to notice is the ball is just about off the left heel. That early wrist hinge, kind of, you can really see it at this side angle. A normal swing, you're kind of starting with your shoulders and not really hinging the wrist till right there. I believe sorry, we got some carts passing us here. I believe that, sorry about that, I believe that you should really hinge the wrist early in the bunker shot. And one thing that I just did not also explain when we were shooting it at the back angle was that you typically do want to have about 70% of your weight kind of leaning into it on this left side like this. That'll allow you to stabilize more and not move on it. If you're kind of 50-50, you can tend to sway back and then blade them, hit them thin. So, basic key points: wide stance, toe kicked out, open club face, early wrist hinge. You see how I'm leaning into that shot. And let's see if I can get a little better now that I know that the rollout's not going to be as much. Just watch the fluidity. I don't think that's a word, but watch how fluid the swing is, okay? So forward about an inch back, and that ended up being a lot better because this time I knew it wasn't going to roll out. That was that ball's about 4 feet from the hole, so not bad off this wet sand. I'm going to take some still shots, draw some lines in the wet sand, club face, and dune sand, just to kind of give you an idea for how much sand you want to hit. I guess I never mentioned that. You never want to hit the ball. You always want to hit the sand behind the ball. The sand is projecting the ball out of the bunker. That's how you get spin. That's how you get consistency. Do not ever do anything like this when you're out of the bunker, okay? Don't ever try and chip it. Watch what will happen here if I just try and chip it. Okay, that came out, but that ball's rolling. That's off the green, okay? I'll do it again. Something else that can happen if you try and chip it with a little swing here. And I'm purposely going to do it this time, but this can happen a lot too. Look, that ball hit the lip. It didn't get on the green. A lot of other stuff can happen when you try that shot. You can just totally go like this. You can go, ball didn't go anywhere. So you want that wide open club face. They call that bounce. Be bouncing off that sand, full swing. None of this stuff. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Open face. So I'm going to take some still shots here, go on a little lecture on different types of club face angles. I'm going to draw some lines in the sand to kind of give you an idea how far you'd want to hit out of it, off wet compared to soft, dune, and that'll be the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed. So check out my website, goinglowbook.com, and then also buy my book. Alright, it's Sean Eberhardt again with this lecture on these screenshots here. So you can see this is my 60-degree wedge in that muddy type of sand that I was hitting out of. Now you can see that's a square club face right there on that 60-degree wedge. And what I was illustrating in the video is opening the club face to more like this. You can definitely tell the difference that is a wide open club face and then that is square. And the reason you want to do this is because if it's square like that, the leading edge of that club is going to dig into that wet mud, whereas when it's open like that,
it will bounce off that mud and kind of cut through it a little bit. Now the next thing I want to show you is the line, because I was talking about assessing the sand, and the thing I mentioned on earlier in the video is in wet sand you want to take a little bit less sand with that open club face, because if you take too much you're going to hit it heavy and you're going to leave it in the bunker. So that line I drew right there, the very tip of that line where it kind of the shadow goes dark there before the ball, that's where I was making contact with the ground. So I'm hitting that sand, not hitting the ball with that full long swing, and hitting that part, that line there right in front of the club face. Okay, now what I want to show you is the difference in the softer sand that was up more toward the front lip of the bunker. So you can just tell by the coloration that is a lot softer sand. That sand is not as saturated. And what I've also done in this softer sand, that now is a 55-degree wedge. I know that's kind of weird, but I have my clubs bent at 55 and 60, and you can tell the difference between the lofts. If you look at the 55 and the 60, that's a pretty big difference of a loft. But so there's the 55 in the dune type softer sand right there. What you still want to do though, however, is still open up that 55, and so you get that bounce on it. Now my 60-degree wedge has a bounce of 66 degrees. This 54 has a bounce of 10 degrees, which means that it'll be more effective out of softer sand. The more bounce, the more effective it is out of softer sand. The less bounce, the more effective it is out of harder sand. I will go into a lecture later on about bounce, but that's pretty much the main thing you need to know. If you're in soft, fluffy sand, you want a club that has more bounce. If you're in more firm, wet sand, you want to have a club with less bounce. Now, the last thing I want to show you before I end this video is how much more sand you want to take out of that dune sand. So you can see the line I drew here, and if you look at the very front of that line right there, that's approximately 1.5 to 2 inches behind that ball, and that's because you're going to want to take more of a full swing, because out of the softer sand it's a lot more difficult to spin the ball, so you're not going to have all that check. They call it kind of playing like a chunk and run. You're not going to spin the ball as effectively out of that softer dune type sand. So if you can look at that line right there as opposed to that line right there, you can tell how much. That line right there is about 1 inch to even 3/4 of an inch. That one right there is about 1.5 inches. That's just a little extra on the video lesson I just did. I know this is a lengthy video, but I know a lot of amateurs, beginners, even very skilled players struggle out of the sand, and I think this will really help you out with this detailed explanation. You all have a good day and go low.